Thank you, Team Arthroscopy, and thank you all for being here this morning. We've seen some heady talks and heady surgeries. We're going to come down to some simple office practice here. We are looking at OA and what to do when we see such patients, which are not real candidates for surgery, but you want to improve their lifestyle. So let's look at these strategic deployments. I'm going to talk to you all on next 15 minutes on the use of steroids in a sensible way, and then we'll throw open a panel discussion to see what is the current opinion of the house. So let's start with the first slide. OA, it's there everywhere. Which country is not suffering? So look at this global issue. Every country is affected with massive osteoarthritis except for this small, tiny island which is in southern Russia, and that too because that population has dwindled. Otherwise, this is on the rise. And look at India. We've got about 100 to 150% increase in osteoarthritis, and you can see how the international knee replacement companies have got so much of interest in our developing nation because the numbers are going to be staggering in the next 15 years. So OA affects everyone. Now, this looks like a busy slide, but ignore everything. Just look at these three long lines. So if you see here, you got this age group from 50 to 54 and 65 to 69. So basically, 54 to 69 is the rough age group. Women are affected more than men, and this is again a global phenomenon. We used to think that women in India are more affected with OA because of their sitting postures, toilet squatting, etc. But this is a worldwide phenomenon. So women,
Dr. Munshi,
more than men.
You're talking about OA of the shoulder or OA in general?
OA knee, sir, we are talking about.
In general?
OA knee arthritis.
Knee, okay.
So now we come down to how big is the problem. So there are several epidemiological studies. I'm not going to bore you into that, but if you look at 2019 and you look at 1990, there has been an increase in the number of cases, and understandably so. Now this is an important slide. This is actually a summary slide which tells you the life of a knee joint. And if you see this escalating ladder, you have these early phases where you undergo reparative surgery, regenerative therapy, you're undergoing osteotomies, rebalancing, pharmacology, and bracing. Once you tip over into this section, that is the region where you're going to offer arthroplasty, whether it's uni, whether it's total, selective patellofemoral, uni with ACL reconstruction, whichever combination you want. And then that is the final gamut. Once you start ticking this biological clock, this is going to be a final eventuality. So we are more focused on this, how to prolong with the patient before they reach the arthroplasty stage. We all know this. What are the contributing factors? We've seen in primary OA, genetics does play a role. Every now and then you'll see a young lady coming to you and asking you, my mother and her sister both have had a knee replacement. Do you think I'm next in queue? And what can I do to prevent this? So lifestyle changes, just as in cardiology, a lot of preventive medicine is occurring in terms of knee and hip OA as well. We all know the secondary causes. I'm not going to go into it, but genetics is playing a significant role. Now we'll come down to the meat of the matter. We are talking about steroids. What are the indications? How do they work? When do we deploy them sensibly? So if you look at steroids, a very simple slide. The steroid injection provides targeted anti-inflammatory effects. So you're hitting the target, you're hitting the synovial, you're trying to decrease the subchondral pain. The local injections will reduce the need for systemic steroids and oral pain medications. So there's a lot of data to show that when you give them oral steroids, it is inferior to injectable steroids. So certainly, in a sensible way, getting in early with injectable steroids is beneficial for the patient. Injections may help you to delay surgery. Yes, it's like coloring your hair. At some stage, the roots will show, but in the short term, you'll be able to buy some time. So steroid has a three-pronged attack. If you use it judiciously for the patient in the early stages or moderate stages of the arthritic process. We know the indications. All this is very well time-tested. I think there are two other areas where there is an expanding indication of steroids is particularly in the frozen shoulder, where I think this triamcinolone molecule scores over the old depomedrol which we've had. It is far superior. And I think Ultrasound-guided procedures, so whether it's Baker cyst aspirational injection, whether this is ganglion, whether you've got these bursae around the ankle. So USG-guided procedures with steroid injections, again, is on the rise. Now, are there any guidelines which are given across the globe which will help us in decision-making as to when, what one should be doing? So let's start with this ORC. So the OARC guidelines, they tell you about non-surgical management of hip and knee polyarticular OA and monoarticular OA as well. Now, this is a very busy slide. One tends to go to sleep or switch off instantly when you see this, but just focus on these red boxes. So this OARC guidelines tells you about the consensus study and the quality of the study. So if you see here, level 1, A and B, these are the top quality studies, and this slide actually is a condensed correlation between all the studies. So essentially, if you see there, you've got the intra-articular steroids coming up fairly early after NSAIDs, selective NSAIDs and COX-2 inhibitors, and then steroids. So that's level 1, 2, and straight away 3. Now, you look at this column, so you have the elderly who have GI disturbance and some degree of cardiovascular affection in whatever form. Here again, steroids raises its head, and so does hyaluronic acid. So there's some data now to support hyaluronic acid as an option. And if you look at the last column here, the old frail patient, here your options should be topical NSAIDs, so start with gel applications with combination with simple paracetamol high dose, and then the next level should be an injection in the joint, provided it's a safe bed to inject in. So OARC guidelines are recommending now regular early usage of steroid injections, and in some places, probably HM. Now, the next guideline, double AOS. So the American Academy again has come up. This is management of OA non-arthroplasty. So we are talking about non-surgical procedures. So what do they say? A, choose a pharmacological agent which has the least systemic exposure and toxicity. Common sense, everyone would do that. And they're now emphasizing on individual therapy. So look at the patient, look at the side effects, look at the GI profile, look at the cardiac history, and then dial in what is best for that elderly patient. So American Academy also recommends. The other guideline, 2021, it said that if you're using acetaminophen, do not exceed more than 3,000 milligrams per day. I think in our country, people would stick to maybe 1,000 milligrams twice a day. I don't think we exceed these guidelines. But perhaps the Caucasians are bigger built, and they have that license to go just across the border. But for us, I think 1,000 BD is a good enough dose. For short-term pain relief, again, a judicious combination with steroids will help you, coupled with selective NSAIDs. All this will buy you intervals of 3 months. So the analysis demonstrated that extended release of intra-articular injections can be used to improve patient outcomes and make them fairly mobile in the short to medium term. Now, we look at this molecule. So, if you look at what's available to us, it's been depomedrol, depopred, methylprednisolone, and kinacort. Really, we are balancing between these two. Dexamethasone is what we use intravenous in the OT. We're not using that in the injectable form. So, if you look at the molecule, like for like, triamcinolone is scoring heavily against methylprednisolone. We'll look at the points. So, the first thing is the corticosteroid has marked anti-inflammatory activity and zero mineralocorticoid activity. So you have no risk of electrolyte imbalance, edema, swelling, etc. It is very commonly available, and it's widely used in orthopedic practice. I think in tier 2 and tier 3 level cities, sometimes it is abused. Also, due to the established effectiveness and a good safety profile, it is a very suitable option in our clinical office practice. So steroids have proven themselves. They are here to stay, and I think as the better molecules are being developed with a higher safety profile, we'll be using them more often. Now, head-to-head comparison. So if you look at triamcinolone here, and you look at methylprednisolone, so methylprednisolone, the duration is intermediate, the concentration is 40 to 80 milligram, and it's a faster onset of action and a shorter duration. So it's like a rocket firing into the air. You had a quick launch, but also a quick descent. Well, look at triamcinolone. It's a long action, and you're only using 10 to 40 milligram per ml, and it's a slower onset of action, but a longer duration of action. So you want to inject something in smaller doses, giving you a wider coverage. In OA, triamcinolone. So safety and efficacy of long-term intra-articular steroid use in OA. Now this is an old paper, 203. We've got it down to show you that this is there since sliced bread, and we've been using it sensibly, so there's nothing new. But choose your molecule wisely is what we are saying. The long-term studies in ONE with injections. So this study compared saline injections versus steroids to see what was happening to the cartilage. So the punchline was no significant deleterious effects of steroids on the joint space at 2 years. Repetitive injections appeared to be well tolerated, and long-term use of steroids afforded decreased symptoms of OA pain and stiffness. So it is safe for the cartilage as long as you're not abusing it. The effectiveness of triamcinolone. This is a very interesting paper. You look at Lazaru's paper, he reported that triamcinolone is efficacious in OA. It shortens your duration of oral medications and significant pain relief. So you've seen great improvement in WOMAC scores, night pain scores, and range of motion at 1 year. So we've all seen steroids will help you. What is the long-term effect on the articular cartilage? A single shot of steroid has no histological effect. 3 weekly injections led to edema, mild circulatory changes of the synovial membrane, but no damage to the articular cartilage. 6 injections, 1 week apart, led to changes in the articular cartilage and some degree of irreversible chondrocyte damage. So I think most surgeons, it would be fair to say that they would stick to 3 injections if need be. Now, again, comparison between triamcinolone and methylprednisolone. Forget all this data, just look at this line. So basically, TA, triamcinolone, will give you peak values of 288 milligram, while this will push up to 500. So the blood glucose levels tend to be lower with triamcinolone, and therefore it's perhaps more favorable in a diabetic setting. Next. So the effectiveness of triamcinolone in RA. Most of us will refer to RA, but a lot of us are treating RA patients as well. And a good ultrasound-guided injection is very effective for small joints as well in patients with RA, particularly hands, elbows, and also in the shoulder, although the shoulder is not a small joint. And more than 90% of the patients with all disease grades, they respond to an average of 1 to 4 injections per year. So some rheumatoid patients are very frail, they don't want surgery. This is a good option, and triamcinolone does work wonders. Does intramuscular help? Is there a role of intramuscular shots in OA and RA? So I think most orthopedic surgeons are using intra-articular, but if you see the rheumatologists, they are a little scared about their skills of injecting accurately, and they rely heavily on intramuscular shots. And they're using it as a bridge therapy. So they're using NSAIDs, they're using steroids, and the moment they're switching over to DMARDs or biologics, that's the time they're using this to give them a window of 4 to 6 weeks. So the effect of intramuscular versus intra-articular steroid injections in OA, does it help? Look at this study, 145 patients. And what was the conclusion? The findings of this trial suggest that both types of injections can be considered with effective strategies, and that a shared decision-making should take place between the clinician and the patient with knee OA. So really, you have to balance in what you want. You want a quick relief, intra-articular. You want a bridge therapy window to buy you some time, perhaps intramuscular also has a role. Can you do both? Shot inside intramuscular plus intra-articular, perhaps your sugar levels will go up, so maybe not. So coming down, this is the summary slide. OA is a major cause of pain globally. We've all seen that. Steroids do offer a potentially safe and an effective solution. Triamcinolone has an effective advantage over MPA, and it gives you a prolonged effect. Again, triamcinolone is very well tolerated with no mineralocorticoid activity. And I think for orthopedic, for rheumatological conditions, It is a very safe option. Thank you.
Thank you, Parag. That